Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on our adventure this morning. We have the awesome, amazing Trey, and he is coming at you from the Kansas Historical Society all the way in Topeka, Kansas. And so that's just
Hello.
north of us in Wichita. So I'm going to send the broadcast over to him, and he's going to teach you all about the awesome state symbols of Kansas. Thanks for being here, Trey.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Good morning, everyone, and happy Kansas Day. I'm so excited to be here today to talk to you about some state symbols of Kansas. Um, as you can see right here, I bet there's a couple that you might recognize off the bat, but before we dive in and talk about the state symbols of Kansas, we have to ask ourselves, what is a symbol? So a symbol is something that stands for something else. They're things like communicating thoughts, commands, objects, feelings, all sorts of things. And symbols are a part of everyday life. So if you get a smiley face on your paper, that means you did a good job. And if you see a sign like that on the bottom of the screen, that means that there's a crosswalk ahead where people are going to be crossing. So, and sometimes symbols can be made through body movement. So if I put my hand up like that, you know that it means stop. Or if I do this, it means come on over. What do you think of when you see these symbols here on the right-hand side of our screen? Kansas, like most states, has a whole bunch of items to symbolize the state, and these are important to Kansas and represent pretty much all of us. Schools have symbols too. Some schools have school colors, a school mascot, or a school song. So when students and parents wear these colors, or when they sing the school song, people think of that school. And when you see these symbols on a shirt or on a banner or a flag, maybe, you automatically think of that team. So Kansas has a 25 official state symbols. So we are going to speed run these all today. We are going to count every single one of them and learn a little bit about each one. Okay, so all the way in 1861, when we first became a state, we get our first state symbol. Now, each state has a state seal, and Kansas is no different. And it has a whole bunch of symbols within the symbol itself. So let's look at the state seal. What all can we see? There's a rising sun to the east, a log cabin, a steamboat, a farmer plowing his field, Native Americans, bison. And then there's 34 stars at the very top of that seal. So that symbolizes that Kansas was the 34th state. And at the very top, it says ad astra per aspera, which is Latin and means to the stars through difficulties. And that means it symbolizes how hard it was for Kansas to become a state. It took a long time and a lot of work, but here we are. So we fast forward a lot. So 1861 to 1903 until we get the sunflower. Now, it's hard to choose, but I think the sunflower is my favorite state symbol. When people think of Kansas, a lot of people think about the sunflower. It's found on our state flag, on the Kansas quarter, and all sorts of marketing. There's tons of different species of sunflowers in Kansas, and native sunflowers can grow up to 15 feet tall. They adapt to different types of soil and are important to bees, butterflies, mammals, birds, insects, even us. We use them for food, for seeds, and we can make oil from their seeds as well. Kansas is known as the sunflower state because when people think about sunflowers, they think about Kansas. So this is something that most people don't normally see. We have a state banner, and this is very unique for states. Most just have state flags, but we got this in 1925, and it was hung horizontally and had the name of the state and then a sunflower with our state seal in it. Um, People didn't really like this design, so in 1953 it was changed to look like this, which might be a little more appealing depending on your personal tastes. So people said, all right, we need a state flag. The banner wasn't working for us. So in 1927, 2 years after that banner, we got the state flag. It's got the state seal, a sunflower, So that has like three Kansas symbols all in one. Um, and in 1961, we modified the flag a little bit to have Kansas, the letters down there. We didn't always have that. But when people see that, there's no mistaking where it's from. Most people don't know that we have a state march. The Kansas March became our state march in 1935. Duff E. Middleton composed it. And believe it or not, we've got a second state march, but we'll get to that one a little bit later. Now, this is one a lot of people know, the meadowlark. In 1937, over 121,000 school children voted for the western meadowlark to become the state bird of Kansas. It's yellow, black, brown, and white, and it has a black V on its chest. It eats insects, seeds, and grains. And Kansas isn't the only state that has the meadowlark as its state bird. Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oregon, and Wyoming also have the western meadowlark as their state bird. So you'll see that some things are so important to states that you see them repeat. So a lot of people like the meadowlark. Also in 1937, we got a state tree, the cottonwood tree. It's sometimes also called the eastern cottonwood. Um, You can find this tree in every single county in Kansas. And while it likes moist areas to grow, it can adapt to drier conditions as well. So it's really suited for Kansas, how much it changes. It grows really fast and can grow up to 100 feet tall and 70 feet wide. Early settlers in Kansas used it for buildings, and today we still use them for shipping crates, pallet boxes, and paper. In 1947, we got a state song, Home on the Range. I bet a lot of you have heard this one. It was originally a poem, and it was written by Brewster Higley in the early 1870s, and then it was later set to music. That poem was called My Western Home, and it reads a lot different than the lyrics that you hear today, but it would go on to be sung by cowboys, and we still sing it and play it today. Home on the Range was our 32nd president, Franklin D. Roosevelt's favorite song. And if you want to see me dressed up like a cowboy playing and singing this song, uh, tell your teacher to go to the Adventure Kansas Day webpage, and there's a link to our YouTube there where you can do your own little sing-along in class. So the state animal, the American bison, a lot of people recognize the bison as being important to Kansas, and it's so important that it became the national mammal of the entire United States. The bison was super important to Native Americans of Kansas as a source of food, clothing, tools, and shelter. They are super big. They're about 6 feet tall and can weigh over a ton. They're also really fast. They don't look like it, but they're super fast, and they can even jump up to 6 feet in the air. At one point in time, only a couple hundred of these remained in the entire country. But thanks to conservation efforts, now we have a bunch. And depending on where you live, sometimes you might be driving down the highway and see a whole herd of bison that people farm. In 1976, we got our state insect, the honeybee. Honeybees are important pollinators and they produce honey. They produce it for the hive for food, but they produce more than they need. So that allows us to enjoy it as a yummy treat. In 1976, school children made a petition, just like the meadowlark, asking for the honeybee to be our state insect. Did you know that bees will dance to communicate with one another? And it's called a waggle dance, which is is a very cute name, but you can look up videos of them waggling to each other. Our state reptile, the ornate box turtle, became our state reptile in 1986. They can live over 30 years old, believe it or not, and they make their homes in prairies and pastures. So they are dry land turtles, meaning they don't live in water like some other turtles do. Now these turtles, they look really cool, but they're protected by law in a lot of different states, including Kansas. So that means you can't remove them from the wild and keep them as a pet. So just leave them where they are and let them do their own thing. Okay, this one is something you can really pull this out as a fun fact. Kansas has a state soil. So might not be as recognizable as the bison or the sunflower, but Harney silt loam is our state soil of Kansas. And some people consider this to be Kansas's most valuable resource because it supports our top industry, which is farming, agriculture. It's the most common soil in Kansas, and helps a lot of different crops grow real big and strong. So I mentioned this earlier, we got the State March 2, Here's Kansas, in 1992. Bill Post composed this one, and um, I'm sure you can look up and hear what these sound like. We got our state amphibian in 1994, the barred tiger salamander. Now, this came from a second grade class at Wichita, Kansas's OK Elementary School. They got the ball rolling to make this the state amphibian. They worked really hard, and it was officially made our state amphibian in 1994. It's got a tiger-like look because of the yellow spots on its body. And while it spends its whole adult life on land, it spends the beginning of its life in the water. And if you look up a real close picture, they look like they're smiling. We have a state grass, little blue stem. We got that in 2010. Um, it's native to all of Kansas and a majority of North America. It can grow up to 5 feet tall and is a great source of food for animals like cattle and bison. It's bluish green or grayish green in early summer, and by July, it makes these little flowering stalks. Okay, so this one I bet some of you know. So in 2014, we got two state fossils, one of which, the pteranodon, was a flying reptile with a large wingspan of around 12 to 18 feet. I'm sure you know this, but it wasn't a dinosaur, it was a pterosaur. Now, Kansas provides the most complete specimens of pteranodon ever found, which makes Kansas very important. Its pair was our marine fossil, the Tylosaurus. Um, these things were huge. They were like 45 feet long and were an apex predator. But you might be thinking, well, Kansas doesn't have any oceans. A long time ago, an ocean called the Western Interior Seaway covered almost all of Kansas. So these things were swimming around all over the place. And like the pteranodon, it's not a dinosaur, but this one is a mosasaur. And you can see these, you can see a baby one at the Kansas State Capitol, the fossils, and you can see the most complete specimen at the KU Natural History Museum. So, a lot of these state symbols come from schools. So this was from an Overland Park fourth grader, Casey. He got the ball rolling to make Greenhorn limestone our state rock. And you don't really think about it by looking at it, but limestone is actually made by the skeletal remains of tiny sea organisms. So I said that Kansas used to be covered by an ocean. Well, all those little things fall down, and over year after year after year, millions of years, they build up into limestone. So then when the ocean recedes and stuff, then all of this stuff is all over Kansas. So today we use it for building materials, and you can see fence posts made out of it, especially when there's not a lot of trees around. So Casey didn't just stop at Greenhorn limestone. He also helped get us a state mineral, galena. It's a lead ore, and it's been used all throughout history, including ancient Egypt. So this has been used by humans for a long time. And Casey didn't stop at just those couple. He said, all right, we need a state gemstone. Well, Gelinite is an amber. It also was called Kansanite, and it's only been found in one county in Kansas and no other location in the entire world. But unfortunately, the area that this was found is now covered by water by a reservoir. So you can't get it anymore. So there's only a few examples of this that exist in the whole world, which makes Kansas pretty special. 2018 was a great year to be a state symbol because we have a fourth one. The state fish, the channel catfish. These are super common in Kansas. They're around 2 to 4 pounds, but you can get ones that are 10 or 20 pounds. And if any of you have been fishing with your parents, I'm sure that you've seen some channel catfish around. All right, we're getting towards the end, and this goes off the rails a little bit. Um, Kansas has a very rich history of vineyards to grow wine grapes in, and Vignole was made the state white wine grape in 2019, and it was also paired with the state wine grape that was red, Chambourcin, which was a French-American hybrid, but wine doesn't have a ton of relevance in your lives, so we won't spend too much talking about it. And then in 2022, we got a state fruit, the Sandhill plum. They're also known as Chickasaw plums, and they can grow up to 20 feet tall and 20 feet wide. The fruit ripens at the end of summer, and you see these a lot in jams and jellies. So if you ever have the chance to try Sandhill plum jelly, it is a Kansas favorite. People are wild about it. And then we get to our very last and latest state symbol, the Sylvosaurus chondrei. So this is our land fossil. So we've got a marine fossil, a flying fossil, and a land fossil. It was the only dinosaur found in Kansas because, like I said, a lot of it was ocean. But it was a medium-sized armored plant eater that lived in the early to late Cretaceous period. And it was named after the rancher who found the fossils in Ottawa County on their farm. So we have gone through 25 official state symbols of Kansas, and now I have to ask, which of these symbols is your favorite? I know I kind of said the sunflower is my favorite, and I'm willing to be swayed to a different one if someone gives me a really good reason. Um, but I'll also ask, what would you like to see become a new state symbol? I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that you see around Kansas that makes you think about it. Um, so I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Wow, that was a lot of information, and I learned so much from you as well there. Didn't know we had all those. I just knew the basic ones. We did have a few questions in the chat. I don't know if you'll know the answer to them, but we'll have a little discussion about them.
All right.
Um, a lot of them were talking about the cottonwood tree, and I don't know if
Yeah.
maybe if you could pull that slide up with the picture. They were wanting to know like maybe how to recognize one if they're at a park or
Oh,
something. Like,
that's
do
a
they really have cotton on them?
those are all great questions. So they don't actually produce cotton, but their seeds look a lot like it. And if you live near a cottonwood tree, you will absolutely know because this stuff will be blowing all over. It kind of looks like a dandelion fluff just blowing around. And if you live by a couple and the wind's picking up, sometimes the whole area will just be covered by this cotton like material. And now I am not great at recognizing trees. I'm trying to get better. I'm pretty good at plants, but trees are a little tough. But what I can tell you is if you are near a tree and you find a leaf or anything, you can have your parents scan that leaf and then Google reverse image search it. And that is how I identify a lot of trees. And then once you know, then you know. Um,
You know, I don't know if this is true, but I heard that maybe some other animals, like birds, might even use that fluff from the tree to make their nests.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it makes great nesting material. It's nice and soft and yeah, it's the same thing with, maybe you brush your animal outside and they pick up some of that hair and put it into their nest. So, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Um, they were also wondering if about the meadowlark bird. And do you know if is the meadowlark all over our state, or does it go like in the eastern part or the western part since it's called a western meadowlark?
Yeah, I've only seen I really like birds. I'm kind of a bird guy. But I've only seen about 4 or 5 meadowlarks. And I've seen them in Topeka, I've seen them in Manhattan. Um, I've seen them maybe around a little east of Hayes. But I actually you would think they would be all over the place, like a robin or a cardinal or a blue jay or something, but I really have only seen quite a few, which is ironic that it's our it's our
Yeah.
state bird. Mm, but
Some
when
of
you do
our
see one, it's very fun, and it's pretty easy with their bright yellow chest and that black V. It's pretty easy to spot one when you see one.
oh, a lot of our answers are coming in of their favorite, and we have lots of votes for the dinosaur fossil and the turtle. So they're in the lead right now with the favorite.
Wow, all right, the box turtle. That that surprises me. But I guess it's still a reptile, so you've got it's kind of like same essence of a dinosaur, maybe just a lot smaller. If you increase the size by about 100 times, I'm sure it would be even cooler. But yeah, turtles are very interesting creatures, and the fossils as well. Now, I've never seen the state land fossil, but I have seen a few examples of the pteranodon, which you can find at the Sternberg in Hayes, and the Tylosaurus. They're both super cool to see in person because pictures don't do it justice. If you think about if you were swimming around and this 45 feet long marine reptile came by, that very scary stuff.
Yeah. Another class here in Wichita was wondering, do you know if bison can run fast or are they pretty slow?
They are super fast and they can turn like right on a dime. So like they can take off and then turn another direction without losing much speed at all. And like I mean they weigh about a ton, so they're really big creatures, but they can jump 6 feet in the air. So that's as tall as I am. They can jump that high and they can jump 10 feet across. Which is really remarkable. Bison are really majestic animals. And one thing they like to do is they like to wallow in the dirt. So seeing one of these big creatures on its back rolling around is a treat.
Here's a question. They were just wondering, like why do we states even have symbols?
That's a great question.
Hmm.
I think a lot of states, want to take pride in what they have. They want to be unique and they want to be special. Um, and they want the people in their state to be able to recognize things that make them have pride. So I think Kansas has more state symbols than some other states, but I don't know that for a fact. I should sometime do a deep dive into state symbols. My gut tells me we have a little more because there's some years, like 2018, where we got 4 in a row. So every now and then we kind of get on these in these trends. And I've heard a state dance be proposed before. There's a few of those. So who knows what we have in score for the years ahead of us. Well, I'm sure it won't stay at 25 for very long.
Some of them have a suggestion that we need a state food or grain, and maybe the great grain should be wheat.
Well, and that's the thing that is just so strange is that, yeah, wheat, Kansas is known as the wheat state, the breadbasket of America, but wheat is not a state symbol, which is perplexing. I've never understood that. And I've polled just like regular people before, like, hey, can you name a Kansas state symbol? And a lot of people will say wheat because it's all over the place. So yeah, I think that is a great suggestion and one that just makes a bunch of sense.
Right. Now I believe it was the mineral. that you talked about.
Yes.
How did you pronounce that one? Jelena?
Galena.
Gal Galena. They want to know is that valuable, like some
I
other minerals are?
Yeah, I don't believe that it is. Now, I don't know a ton. Natural history isn't really my specialty, but since it's a lead ore, my guess is it's probably it's valuable for building materials and stuff. But I don't think it has a lot of monetary value. So
Mhm.
it's not worth a ton on its own. Um, Now, this gemstone, that is very, very, very pricey, just because
Okay.
so few of these
That's the
exist.
one they were talking about, actually. Sorry, not the mineral, the gemstone. It's valuable.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, Gelinite, I think there's only a couple. I've actually only seen like this one picture. Um, so there's maybe 3 or 4 examples of this in the whole world.
Oh, so it's not something you would find like at a jewelry store a lot with necklaces.
No, no, this is something you would find at a
It's got to
very
be rare.
exclusive auction.
Okay, very nice. Um, let's see if we have a few more questions. I have something while I'm looking through here. I'm gonna have a little trivia question for our boys and girls and see if they can research this and find the answer for their teacher sometime because I got it as a question not too long ago when I was playing a trivia game. It's not about Kansas, but it was, do you know the only state flag that's not a rectangle shape? So see if
Oh,
you guys can research which of our 50 states has a flag that's not a rectangle.
I don't even know this, so
So, um, okay, you mentioned that the sunflower was probably your favorite, and they want to know if you're sticking with that.
I had the love for the box turtle has maybe shifted me a little bit, but I think I've got to stick with the classic Kansas sunflower. Whenever I wear suits, I always wear a little Kansas sunflower lapel pin, so
Mhm.
everybody kind of knows where I'm from and knows what I'm proud of. So I'm always proud to be a Kansan and be from Kansas. So I like to use that symbol to show other people what I'm about. So I think for right now I'll stick with the sunflower, but feel free to try to sway me. I'm always open to it.
Nice. Well, we're almost out of time. Someone did get the correct answer in our Q&A section, and it is the state of Ohio. So
Ohio,
you'll
wow.
have to
Okay,
go
well
check
now,
out what shape it is. I
yeah,
won't
now
tell
I've got to
you guys
Google
will
this
find out.
once we get done.
Yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is where you work at the Kansas Historical Society. Is that a place that the community can visit, like a museum, or is that just an office building where you work on things?
Yeah, it sure is. So we have the Kansas Museum of History, the State Museum for all of Kansas, and then we have the State Archives, which is all of our research materials. So our museum is actually closed right now. We're basically doing a whole renovation. We're creating a brand new museum. So it's going to be very, very exciting, and you can all visit later this year. So check in a little bit later with us, and you will have a blast when you come, I promise.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time and all the knowledge that you bestowed on us this morning. And
Well,
boys and
thank
girls,
you.
thanks for joining us. We had a lot of people in this session today, so I hope they enjoyed it and learned something. And it's always a pleasure having you, Trey.
Well, thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day and a wonderful Kansas day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Take care.